the big idea really is all about putting more food waste back on the menu for pigs, because pigs evolved alongside human beings to eat what was left over, and they have similar dietary requirements to humans. And I think the pig idea is interesting because the proposal we feel can happen right now and start us on that way to sort of an enlightened agroecological food system, and thereby in the long term it can also be part of the long-term solution. But I think it's something that can come fairly early on without too much radical change as far as I can see it. We also believe that yes, people do need to eat less meat, and right now probably being vegan vegetarian is kind of the thing to do to balance out what's going on, the things, for example, that were described by Tracy. But in the long run, you know, pigs and small numbers of livestock do have a role to play in our food system. And when we talk about food waste for pigs, we talk about unavoidable food waste that is no longer fit for human consumption. So we wouldn't want to take food away from people, obviously. And there's two levels here. We want to help maximize the use of food waste that is currently permissible to feed to pigs. And to do that, we've developed a tool. If we move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, maybe straight on to the next one, just to move it. Where end users, which would be food businesses like dairy processors, farmers, food manufacturers, retailers, or restaurants, can go in through this tool and find out whether their surplus food can be used as livestock feed, and how they can do it safely and legally, which is very complicated right now. And I think a lot of people get put off doing it because the legislation is so complicated, and to go on the DEFRA website is just off-putting and scary. And in fact, I was just talking about your farm, that the local inspector told that you couldn't feed eggs to pigs, which is wrong. You can. So even the supposed inspectors who are supposed to know don't know. So we've sort of developed this tool to help, and that's just been launched a few weeks ago now. If you move on to the next slide, please. And yeah, so for example, if you have cakes or bread, it can be used as farm animal feed, and then it tells you how you have to register and sort of the different things you have to do. So that's something we've been doing. But what I really want to talk to you about is about the fact, if we just move forward again. Yeah, move to the next one. The problem is that we can't use any leftovers that have gone through a kitchen, whether that kitchen is vegetarian, vegan, a normal kitchen, your house kitchen, a restaurant kitchen. We can't use any of those leftovers in pig feed, and we're really missing a big opportunity there. If we move on to the next one, yeah. So just some people forget, because of the legislation, that pigs are omnivores. They like eating everything. They like eating meat as much as most people do, as well as plants and all sorts of other things. But because of legislation, European pigs are forced to be vegetarians effectively, although they can get fish meal, which has a whole set of big problems, which I won't go into here now, but that's, yeah, it's terrible stuff actually when you find out about fish meal. And obviously the soya that Tracy mentioned, that is grown often in UK, for example, 80% of soy comes from Brazil, and the impact on deforestation there is huge. And something I've been wondering, and I haven't been able to explore too much yet, but you know, we know that tail biting comes from the stress and the sort of cramped conditions. I've also been wondering whether there's something in there in the mix, the fact that they're being forced to be vegetarian when they're not, whether that's one of the little elements in sort of the tail biting situation that pigs often find themselves in. And so we propose to change legislation to allow restaurant leftovers and just general leftovers to be used as pig feed. And why we'll come back to in a minute. But often policymakers here say it can't be done safely because of the foot and mouth outbreak that we had in 2000, which in fact happened on a farm with a farmer that was just not taking any care with hygiene conditions at all. It wasn't because of the feeding of leftovers as such. And what we're proposing, because we think this is sort of the first step, is a more technological solution where food waste is heat treated. It's basically heat treated to kill off dangerous pathogens to make it safe for feeding to pigs. And to see how that works If we go to the video now, please. Just show you how it's done in Japan. And while the video is being put on, I want to see, there is a bit of footage of an actual pig farm, and there you can see that the Japanese haven't really done it for welfare reasons, and that's something that I'll come back to later, so please don't take this as us promoting the way the pig farm you will see in here.
Trucks loaded with food waste come in through there and are unloaded here. Then the contents are weighed and registered. Thanks to their barcodes, we can put all the info on the waste product's dates, origin, and quantity into the computer. After they're registered, we load the waste into the machine. The empty trash bins get a high-pressure washing. Then we return them to the food companies. After the waste is in the machine, the sorting process starts. We asked the companies working with us to not leave any foreign objects in their food waste. But some slip in, so we check the waste manually or using a metal detector. After it's sorted, we move into the grinding stage. That's when the waste is turned into a thick liquid, which flows into this silo.
Otakyu has made recycling good business. The reprocessing of Japan's dumpsters has proven to be profitable. The feed mix made from treated waste is resold to pig farmers. 8,000 swine eat it year-round. The Otakyu system has won over this farm, which has stopped buying grain to feed its livestock.
Feed like this costs less than the industrial feed I used to give my pigs. From that perspective, it's better for my finances. It's also better for the environment, so it's better for everybody. Compared to the price of my old feed, this environmentally friendly product costs me half as much.
Otakyu doesn't let anything go to waste. Everything is reprocessed and everyone wins. What's more, this way the group can stock its supermarket shelves with organic pork. Its green label pigs are raised on the house feed mix gleaned from dumpsters. But they only got to this point thanks to a law passed 10 years ago requiring the Japanese food industry to treat its waste.
The most noticeable differences in food. Liquid feed has had a big impact on the taste of meat. This yogurt-enriched mix has made meat healthier and less fatty.
Yeah. If you can go back to the presentation, please. Yeah, into the next slide. Yeah, so in Japan and South Korea, feed is produced at about half the cost of conventional feed. And why is that a big deal? In Europe, pig farmers spend about, well, it depends on the country, so UK would be 56%, in Spain up to 70% of total production cost of pork is on feed. So imagine if the price of soya in the international market does a little blip. It's just, you know, the farmers are completely, and whilst this alone won't be a solution to create higher welfare farming, it certainly should help, or it should take away the excuse that it can't be done. So that's the way we're hoping we're contributing to the welfare side of things. Yeah, if we move on to the next slide. But the other big advantage, and why bother with all this, if you like, is to look at the environmental impact of meat. If we do this, if we were to reprocess food waste in the way that it's done in Japan and in South Korea, we could reduce the land use for producing feed for pigs in Europe by more than 20%. That's 1.8 million hectares, or 3 times the size of the Black Forest, or if you like, the size of Wales is another example. So we would need land the size of Wales, we wouldn't need to use that to produce things like maize, barley, wheat, or soya for our pigs. And if we know the impact of agriculture, what was being talked about by you, then we know that this can really make a big difference in terms of the environmental impact of pork. Moving on to the next slide, please. And all these data are not something that we say as the Pig ID. This is from research by Cambridge University, so peer-reviewed journal. So feeding pigs on food waste could also replace 9 million tons of grain, which would be equivalent to the annual consumption of 70 million EU citizens. Moving on to the next one. And would reduce the demand for 268,000 hectares of soybean. And then we did our own calculation. We took a very conservative estimate out of 4 peer-reviewed journals on the density of Amazonian rainforest trees, and we came to the figure of 40 million trees that we could save if we were to adopt this system. Yeah, moving on to the next one. Now, another piece of research that was done by Cambridge as well is on comparing the advantage of using food waste in biogas or anaerobic digestion versus using it in pig feed, because right now the biogas industry, as has been referred to before, is subsidized, and it siphons a lot of good surplus food that could go to even feed humans, let alone pigs, gets taken into the energy sector. When in fact, if you look at this piece of research, it shows that pig feed is performing better on all 14 indicators of a typical life cycle assessment, so it's sort of an environmental performance research. And this was done using data for the current UK energy mix, which isn't very renewable. So if you were to do this study in a place like Germany or Denmark, where your energy mix generally is much more renewable, then in fact, pig feed would do even a lot better, and you would get that fossil fuel depletion line would also turn more favorable to using food waste in pig feed. So really, environmentally speaking, it's a no-brainer as far as we are concerned. Now, policymakers are concerned about certain things, and they talk about TSE, or mad cow's disease. If we go on to the next slide. Yeah, and just press one more because, yeah. So, and actually let's talk about this head on. In the food waste that comes from a restaurant, there could well be some pork. Now, in nature, and I think farmers can confirm this for us, that pigs sometimes do eat a bit of pork. We won't go out of our way, don't want to promote this, but if a little bit ends up in food waste, then that's perfectly normal, and pigs have always been eating food waste with all kinds of meat mixed up in it. And the evidence shows that there is absolutely no way in which pigs can get mad cow's disease or transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, to have the scientific term. So yeah, I just wanted to mention this because I think it's important, and to not mix it up with the mad cows scandal and other kinds of scandals in the feed and the meat industry. Moving on to the next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. But to reassure policymakers who are particularly concerned because of foot and mouth that it can be done safely, we've been working with scientists, and in fact next month we're bringing together scientific experts from across Europe, microbiologists, viral epidemiologists, and kind of biohazard waste experts to come up with a risk management strategy which is based on the Japanese legislation. But the research we have already shows that heating the food waste properly kills off the pathogens, and so you can do it, and all you have to do is manage the risk to avoid that your treated food waste is contaminated with the raw food waste. But there are many examples of biohazardous waste treatment that show that that can be done. But we're kind of putting all our ducks in a row, so to speak, so that policymakers can't turn around and say, oh no, you can't do it. And that's kind of more the high-tech side of things, and that's to get our foot in the door so that eventually we can really put food waste back on the menu for small and medium-scale farmers, make it cheaper for them to feed their pigs and do the high-welfare pig farming that we would like to see, all of us. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I've just got the final slide with my email if anybody's got any questions. And that's a poster from the Second World War when this was commonplace to feed food waste to pigs. Yeah. Thank you.